Welcome to Mastering the Art of Success. I'm your host, Debbi DiMaggio. We are here today with actually someone I do know. Most of the guests I interview are not people I know. And I am so excited to welcome my publicist, Liz Kelly.
Well, thank you, Debbie, for having me. I love your energy. I love this show, and I'm so excited about your new book too.
Thank you, sweetie. Yeah, we'll have to dive into that as well. Well, I'm thrilled to have you on my show and ask you all kinds of questions. So we are going to get started. Liz H. Kelly is the award-winning Goody PR agency and Goody Business Book Awards CEO and founder of the #1 best-selling author of 8-Second PR, new public relations crash course up to 2022, who is working on her upcoming book, award-winning Publicity, coming soon, March 2026. She's also a speaker and podcast host whose primary mission is to magnify good through the power of positive publicity. With 20 plus years of public relations and marketing experience, Kelly has booked thousands of national and local media interviews, primarily for small businesses, CEO, CMOs, and founders, and nonfiction author clients. Kelly specializes in securing media related business, entrepreneurism, health and wellness, wealth and finance, leadership, entertainment, and technology. Examples of Goody's PR's top media coverage for clients include The Today Show, CNN, BBC World News, News Nation, CBS Health Watch, Pioneer PBS, Story won an Midwest Emmy Award, NPR, Bloomberg Radio, and in Time, People, Forbes, Fast Company, Entrepreneur, along with hundreds of local TV and top podcasts. Kelly is a Johns Hopkins University Carey School of Business grad and a member of the National Press Club. She is from Baltimore, Maryland, and now lives in Santa Monica, California. Kelly loves photography, living near the mountains and ocean, and is an autism advocate. Welcome, Liz. Wow.
Well, that's a that's a mouthful, but I might have to shorten that bio. But thank you for the introduction.
You're welcome. Well, I could say a handful of those things she did for me. So I'm very grateful to Liz. It's probably been, we worked together the first time probably over 10 years ago when my kids were leaving to go grow up and go off to college. And I was having a horrible time with the empty nest. And I wrote my first book and met with Liz, and it's been a love story ever since. So
It
I always,
is.
I
It's
always
been
loved.
so great to watch.
I know, right? You've seen me grow. I was in a bad place when the kids left for college, and I found Debbie again after the kids left. That was tough. So I always like to start from the beginning. Let's start where you're from and when you were growing up. Did you ever imagine you would be doing what you are doing today?
Well, that is a great question, and I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland, and I'm on the West Coast now, which I really like, but those Baltimore roots really go way back. And no, I had no idea that I was going to be doing this. But what I was good at doing that I remember is storytelling. And we had a little, I don't know what you call it. It was like a little puppet stage thing. And we would do puppet shows in the basement for the family. And I was like the director coming up with the stories. And we used to collect these puppets, and it was just a big deal. And then I remember also my aunt and my mother would make us pose for these comedy videos. It's like me and my sister sitting in the backyard sunbathing, and then you see my brother sneaking up with a bucket of water, and he pours the bucket of water on us, and then and this is like before we had all this high technology video. So I think I get some of this goofiness and storytelling from my mother.
I love it. And so just quickly, you don't have to fill in everything, but so when you left Baltimore, how'd you end up in California and what were you doing before you went into PR?
Sure. So I left Baltimore to go to Washington D.C., where I worked in telecom. and I love learning. And so the internet was like the next big thing, and there were so many startups in LA that I was like, I'm going to move to LA and join startup.com, which is basically what I did. And then how I got into PR, you fast forward, I'm working for .com, and it's 9/11, and everybody has their 9/11 story. And I was actually a stranded business traveler in New York. All of our clients were financial services, so I became a therapist to a lot of them and supporter, because, all of those companies sadly lost people. And that had a dramatic impact on me. So a friend of mine who was a crisis counselor for the Navy said to me, write it down. And I was like, what do you mean? And she goes, write down what you're going through, because there were so many emotions at that time, and
Yes.
and it'll make you feel better. And so that led to, 3 months later, I get laid off, and then I try to get that story published. Nobody wants to publish that story. So I say, okay, we're going to shift gears, and we're going to do something positive, because,
Mhm.
it was like the world was ending, and it was a really tough time. So I was like, let's focus on something positive. So I decided to use these man codes that I had been making up at parties for different types of men, and turn it into a dating book, because in high school I was called Dr. Liz for helping people with dating advice. And these codes, the first code was the WD. And the WD was the wounded divorcee who never wanted to get married again. And I was looking for the BA, the bachelor available, who would not run when I said the word relationship. And so this evolved into this whole book. And those man codes, I ended up coming up with 26, and each
Wow.
one has a movie example and a true life story. And
Wow.
those got so many interviews, and I proactively went after, coffee meetings and conferences with authors who have been there, done that, and said, how do you get a literary agent? How do you get on TV? How do you get a book published? How do you come up with a title? And all of these experts helped me. So it was a big investment in time and money and resources. But, at the end of the day, I was like, I'm pretty good at this. I want to do it for other people. And that's why I started my PR agency called Goody PR.
That is a great story. Okay, you've talked about the book a little bit about this dating book. So it's such a big deal right now to for people trying to find their life partner. It's I just literally met someone yesterday who told me her story that taking a page out of my book, Mindset in Motion, and my framework that will be coming out soon about the Mindset in Motion method. One of my things is my first point is your goal and finding clarity. I was speaking to her the other day, and she said she had just gotten married, and she said she went on 350 dates. 10 years ago, kind of when I started working with you, she said, what's really important to me, and she was in her 30s, so she wasn't in her 20s, she was later in her 30s, and she said, I really want a life partner. She literally joined all kinds of apps. She went on at least once a week. Her roommates were like, you're crazy. Nothing's happened. And you've been out this for 10 years. And she, and then she joined one that was for people who weren't monogamous. And that's where she met her husband. She said, I am monogamous, but I am on this app. So if anyone else believes in that, get in touch. Well, her and her husband met on that app and they are married and she's in her 40s and she found her life partner. That was after 10 years. So dating is a hard thing. So will you please go in a little bit about this book and how can people find it? Was it a published piece or is it a book? So give some our guests, this is kind of a nice thing that didn't expect today.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, dating is hard. And that was one of the key tips from one of my media trainers. They said, never go on TV and act like you know everything, because, it will cut people off, because it'll make you not relatable. So I
Mm.
always tell all my clients, please say this is not easy, because even if you're an expert in things, you still make mistakes and you still have challenges. So the dating's not easy, but and I was frustrated in LA meeting all these WDs, wounded divorcees. So I did the same thing that she did. I went on all these dates. And the book, by the way, is called Smart Manhunting, and is the subtitle is something like a fast track dating guide to finding Mr. Right. And so I try to say it was like make your mate hunt like a job hunt. And
Mm.
so I used some of my corporate background and marketing background to come up with a process to get ready and get out there. And then the last part was figuring out if you found the right person. So these man codes turn into a compatibility guide. So, for example, the first one is the all sports fanatic. So the movie example was the movie Fever Pitch with Jimmy Fallon and Drew Barrymore. And Jimmy Fallon is like this crazy Boston Red Sox fan to the point where his sheets are the Red Sox, his socks are for the Red Sox, and even he's wearing underwear that is Red Sox underwear, right? So he takes Drew Barrymore to the games, and he's like a regular, season ticket holder. And she takes her laptop because she doesn't really care about the game and she wants to get her work done. So I was saying that they weren't really compatible because she's like working on her laptop in the middle of the Boston Red Sox games, which is like a religious experience for the super fans that Jimmy Fallon was. So anyway, of course, at the end of the movie, they get together and she becomes more of a fan. But it was the storytelling and these man codes that really put it on the map, which is what I talk about in my public relations books. Is you have to come up with a unique story that's unique to you, but also you can use things like movie examples to add some fun to it. And just to go back to your question about, kind of the big picture, this book got published 3 times. So
Wow.
the first time I self-published, and I wrote it in 9 months, and I was like, I'm gonna get it published, right? And I got on national TV because I hired 2 publicists. I took
Wow.
money out of my IRA. That's very important. I took money out of my IRA to pay these publicists. I was so determined, right?
Um,
And so
Yeah.
they get me on national TV, and everybody at the self-publisher is like, who is this person that's getting on national TV with a self-published book? So then Barnes and Noble picked 7 books out of 12,000 titles, and they picked my
Wow.
book to put it in their stores. And I got assigned an editor by Barnes and Noble, which she was fantastic and gave me all kinds of new ideas. And then my friend, this is related to dating, she met this literary agent on Match.com in New York City. So she goes to lunch. She goes to lunch with the literary agent and takes all my stuff. And she's like, "You will represent Liz Kelly." And so by the end of lunch, he has said yes. And then 2 weeks later, he got me a book deal with Kensington Books.
Wow. That's incredible. And so, why did you hire two publicists and not one?
Well, I they were kind of back to back, so I hired the first one and I learned a ton from them and I really valued them, but I was kind of new to PR, and so I thought, well, I want to try to get more PR, so I'm going to try somebody else. So a couple
Okay.
months later, I tried another publicist who also got me great PR, but at this point I'm guessing I had already invested like $100,000 in this project. It is
Wow.
it is not cheap to publish a book if you want to get it out to the world and you really want to promote it. And I was determined, so I had spent a lot of money on 2 publicists, 3 media trainers, a
Wow.
website designer, and so I thought, well, I'll try to do this myself. And then that's when I leapfrogged into doing it myself. So it was a 5-year promotion period, and I ended up getting 500 media hits.
Wow. So, do you look
Yeah.
back on the 100 grand you spent as Well, one, did you make a return on that? And number two, do you, I oftentimes see things as education processes, not that because I invested that, I should get that. For me, it sounds like there was just, it was like going to college for you because you went and did this yourself later. How do you see it? What, if you can answer those two questions?
I think those are great questions. I mean, first of all, you have to be really passionate when you publish a book. And people told me, write about something you love because everybody is going to tell you you're crazy. We don't need another book about dating, and you just have to be fearless and be like, tough, I am writing a book about dating. So that's really number one. But number two, about return on investment, yes, I feel like I got a return on investment, but let me explain. The return on investment came when I started my PR agency, using the knowledge that I had gained so that I
Right,
could help other people do the same thing. It did not come in the book sales. And I
right.
will be totally transparent. My advance, sometimes as an author, you get an advance from a publisher, was $10,000. And then the book got sold to two other countries. I think it was Russia and Taiwan. So
Uh-huh.
I got a little bit of money from foreign rates. So the total advance was 10,000, and the foreign rates were about $2,000 for each country. So we'll call that $14,000, and I've invested 100,000. So most people would say that's crazy, but at the time I was just passionate, I was determined, I wanted to change my life, I was having a blast doing
Uh-huh.
this. I was meeting so many interesting, people, and I really wanted to make a positive impact and help people find their soulmate. But in the end, it was not until years later. I have to, the last version of the book was 2006. And then I started the PR agency in 2009. So 3 years later, I started the PR agency. And I'm so grateful that it all worked out. But, sometimes you don't know where your book journey is taking you. And I definitely did not, but there was a return. It just didn't happen right away.
Right. No, one of the things I say in my book, Mindset in Motion, is that sometimes you're in motion going one way and then you end up pivoting and it takes you somewhere else. So what I'm hearing is through that whole experience and that $100,000 you spent, you learned so much. Those lessons are invaluable. You learned things that you took into your own company. So you founded Good EPR with the mission to magnify good through positive publicity. And I know you're so good about putting words together and having people remember what you say. So, with the mission to magnify good through positive publicity, tell us how that idea came to you.
Absolutely. Well, I had started this other thing called the Goody Awards. And the Goody Awards, the idea was to recognize people making a difference. And
Mm.
my original idea was to create World Peace University. And that I met with all these CEOs with like a PowerPoint deck, and it just was overwhelming, right? But I had this little thing called awards, and people were like, I like that awards thing. So I developed this whole program called Goody Awards, and we recognize top people like the director of the Cove, Amma the Hugging Saint, Ian Somerhalder from Vampire Diaries, all for making a difference. And then we supported their charities. The challenge with that was I was spending so much energy in it that I was neglecting my business, which was called Sunrise Road Media. Okay, and Sunrise Road Media came from the idea of watching the sunrise in Hawaii because my
Oh,
first clients were in Hawaii. So you wake up, you're on the beach, you're watching the sunrise, you're like, this is really cool. But the problem with Sunrise Road Media was nobody knew what it was, right? So I decided, let's leverage the Goody Awards brand that was going viral and rename my business to Goody PR
Okay.
and make it focus on clients making a positive impact. And that name change from Sunrise Road Media to Goody PR was a total game changer. So I encourage anybody who's watching, to think about that and to spend a lot of time on your brand because, you know, waking up watching the sunrise is great, but that if it's not clear, concise, and compelling, you're not going to attract the customers you want.
That is so true. So over the years, I've bought so many domains. I mean, my name is Debbie DiMaggio, but I have bought so many domains coming up with creative things. I did a little stint in producing a film and I called it Sleepless Nights Productions and then Just Just Coffee First or something productions. But now with my book, I'm putting it as DiMaggio Publishing House and I'm going to stick with my name, but names are so important. But I love to hear the story of Sunrise. I never knew what that meant. I never asked you. I didn't really stick with me, but Goody PR does. And it's so funny because when I think your name is Liz Kelly and I've known you for so long, and but Goody PR just well, because you really hit it home when you're doing your Goody PR awards. And now I get the link. You were trying to do something on making the world a better place and doing something to help and to bring positive influence. So good EPR is another way to do that. And so I love it. That is really exciting. So before I go into my other questions, I want to know what is the difference? So you work with authors. What is the difference if someone should self-publish or find a publisher? I've heard pros and cons by multiple people, whether you should self-publish or you should have it published by a publishing house. I was getting so many different opinions, and I am a control freak, so I really wanted to self-publish because I don't want to wait on anyone, as you know. But I did consult with my shaman, Flavio, and I said, self-publish or have it published, and he said self-publish, keep the control. So if someone doesn't have a shaman or doesn't believe in shamans, what would you say the differences are, and do you have an opinion which way, or a professional opinion what people should do?
Well, I love that question because I get that all the time from authors, and I think it really has evolved. So back when I did smart man hunting, it was one of my goals to get a national publisher and actually get a book deal. That was one of my goals. But that was 20 years ago. So now we have many, many new tools and many new options to self-publish. So I am a huge advocate of self-publishing. And part of that too is that when I was working with the publisher on Smart Man Hunting, if they give you an advance, like they gave me $10,000, what they say is you're not going to get a dime from us until you sell enough books to cover that 10,000, right?
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, oh yeah, you got to earn it back. So I have one client who got $1 million advance and he called me and he's like, "Liz, I am never going to see another penny," right? Because he had sold 17,000 books, which translates into maybe times 3, so we'll call it $45,000. But let's say he had earned 45,000 and he's got a $1 million advance and he's not going to get any money until he earns a million. So anyway, the math is really hard. And then the other challenge is that, like you said, they take control. So when they did smart man hunting, they did not consult me on the book cover. And I
Oh,
hated the book cover. And my literary agent said, tough. Yeah, you have no say. They have complete control. Now, I think they're probably more collaborative now, but ultimately it's it's their decision. So I don't like that. I don't like the math. And if you publish on Amazon, self-publish through KDP, you can go into the back end portal. It'll tell you exactly what the book sales are. It'll tell you exactly what your royalties are. And that has been invaluable for my first PR book, 8 Second PR, that I self-published. And so I recommend that. You can also publish on Ingram. By publishing on Ingram, um, then bookstores can pick it up and libraries can pick it up. So for my new book, Award-Winning Publicity, I am going to try Ingram and Amazon. The other ones
Oh,
I only did
we're
Amazon.
right back. We got to take a break. This is so fun. We'll be right back with Liz H. Kelly and the Goody Awards. Thank you. I'll be right.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. You know, it feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical. Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk.
Welcome back to Mastering the Art of Success. I'm your host, Debbi DiMaggio. We are here with Liz H. Kelly of Goody Awards and Goody PR. So you were just talking, just to wrap it up, publish or self-publish, and I think we're leaning toward, well, I guess, is there a different, when should someone get a publishing house? Is there a reason or in favor of having a publishing house rather than self-publishing?
Well, I'm really glad you asked that question because I don't want to diminish a publisher. There are reasons to get a publisher, and I think one of the biggest ones is they can distribute your book in bookstores around the country, and it's more prestigious. But what I would recommend is trying to get one of the top 5 book publishers like Simon and Schuster or Wiley. And I have colleagues who that's what they specialize in. They get book deals. And one of my friends, Randy Pizer, who runs Author One Stop, she just got a client a $50,000 advance and with a top publisher. So there are benefits to doing that. There's also something called hybrid publishers. And
Mm,
hybrid publishers, I've seen a lot of authors use them because they help you with a lot of the mechanics behind the scene that you and I are both going through working on our new book. They actually will handle the interior book design and the book
mm.
cover for you. So there's a lot of benefits to going hybrid. But if you are really shooting for the moon and you are a bigger name, I think is totally worth getting a publisher. But you've got to work with somebody that knows how to get to that top 5 publisher and get you a good deal.
Got it. That's important. Um, so people also talk. I was interviewing an author from Australia some time back, and he used to be a real estate agent, and now he writes mystery novels. And there's two things that he does. One of them is he does novellas, so smaller mystery books. Instead of big ones, he does a lot of smaller ones. So, do you know anything about that, or can you share any insight on that, or when would someone do a novella?
I don't know a lot about novella, but I can tell you that mystery books are one of the top genres because people like to read them. I focus more on nonfiction authors because I want to work with thought leaders making a difference with words. But for somebody who is really creative and wants to develop characters, there's a lot involved in that. I did do PR for somebody who did a mystery book. So I learned a lot about this because he had a lot of character development and he wanted to make it like a Sherlock Holmes book. So we tied it to like Sherlock Holmes' birthday. I think the launch was tied to that. So there is a whole culture of people that do that. And the number one genre is actually romance. So my dating book was a nonfiction self-help how to find your Mr. Right book. But if you are so that's not this, but if you want to write a romance novel, that's a top genre.
Okay, cool. And the other thing he did was he talked about, which I found fascinating. And of course, when you think about it, he has his book published in multiple places. He also did both. He did have a publisher and he self-published. The lack of control was tough, and he made more money self-publishing than he did with a publisher because they have to get paid too. But what he did is he had his book translated into other languages. Is that something that is hard to do, to have your book? Like, I would love to have Mindset in Motion translated into many books, many languages, and over throughout the countries, various countries. How difficult is that, and how do you go about doing that?
Well, I am not the expert on that, but I can give you the high level because I have seen clients do this. So if you want to get your book translated, let's say into Spanish, um, that's it's a fairly easy process in that you can find somebody to translate it. So that's step one. But step two is then you have to find somebody that is fluent in Spanish who can read it and proofread it to make sure that your
Yeah,
message did not change. Because when you're dealing with a different language, your message might change. Now, with, for example, the dating book Smart Man Hunting, because Russia picked it up, it got translated to Russian. And I have no idea if it made sense because I can't speak Russian. Same thing with Taiwan picked it up. So I couldn't understand that version either. So that's the thing. If you have a publisher and you have a literary agent, because my literary agent worked that deal with the foreign rights, that's what it's called, getting foreign rights, um, then let them do it. But if you're doing it yourself, then there's a lot more hand holding, and that's where you really need to have a third party who, in the example I was giving, is fluent in Spanish and also understands your original book to make sure the message did not change.
right. So get us the English speaking and a Spanish speaking so they can read it in English and then translate it appropriately. Yes, gosh, that does happen. It happens with people speaking the same language. Messages get turned around.
Right.
Okay, let's pivot back to you and your success. You've helped clients land coverage on outlets like Today, CNN, and Forbes. What separates people who get media attention from those who do not?
Well, it's easy. It's all about the story, and you have to come up with what I call a wow story. So it's not just a story, it's a story with story magic that makes people say wow and becomes a water cooler topic. So for
Mm,
example, the Today Show, I was working with an addiction center called Warriors Heart, Warriors with an S, and they help military veterans and first responders struggling with, alcohol and drug abuse or PTSD or mental health issues, right? So that is a huge higher purpose business, and that story alone is a wow, but it wasn't enough because nobody wants to just put your business on and make it sound like an ad, right? So
Right.
they would not put on Warrior's Heart as, wow, you're doing these great things. But what we did that was the game changer was we got a alumni who had gone through their addiction treatment, who had overcome a 17-year opiate addiction, who was a former Green Beret,
Wow.
who then sat there and said, with his therapist who was in the segment, he sat there and said, "Well, Vani saved my life." So when you get dramatic statements like that, and it came from the heart and it was natural, that's where you get the wow story that makes you
And
stand
that's
out. And
right.
so that's the best example, but I have many examples like that that aren't as, intense. For
Right.
example, the same group, Warriors Heart, they have a canine service dog program, right? So if you go to treatment, you can work with the service dog. And they had a great spokesperson as the canine trainer. And she had a local TV interview, and she said, yeah, it takes 120 hours to train a service dog. And so we got all these comments questioning this 120 hours. So I called her up and I said, "What can you explain to me more about what you mean?" And she said, "Yeah, what I mean is it's 120 hours for every support behavior." So, in other words, if somebody has PTSD and their leg is shaking, you want to train that service dog to go over and put their paw on their leg to stop them from shaking their leg. It takes
Wow.
120 hours to train a dog to walk over and stop somebody from shaking their leg. So
Wow.
that was a wow that ended up getting a cascade of media coverage that, I didn't see at first. So a
Right.
lot of times these wow stories aren't obvious the first time you talk to somebody, and you really have to brainstorm, go on walks, and we are so passionate about all our clients, and we call them VIP clients because we only take 5 VIP clients at a time, because it's not easy to come up with all these stories, and you have to be always brainstorming.
Right. So you're constantly in storytelling mode in your mind for each client. So do you know how we've been talking? So my book, Mindset in Motion, one of the stories I talk about is how I reverse engineered the method, how I reverse engineered my goals. And one of the things that I did was run the LA Marathon on mindset alone. Do you know how you're going to share that story at all yet?
Well, I love that story, and for everybody who's watching, it is incredible. Debbie just decided to go run the LA Marathon with no training, and she finished. And that's like amazing. So, what I'm planning to do is put that in a press release, which hopefully is going to go out soon because the LA Marathon is coming up this weekend, and I'm going to work on that today, actually. And I think it is such a great story because everybody likes to cheer for a hero, and everybody likes to hear these types of stories. One person I heard on an interview say, "Well, this is not recommended." Because, we don't want anybody having a heart attack doing a marathon with no training. So I will preface it by saying that Debbie is very active. And so I believe that that's part of her wow story, is that, she's, and part of the mindset in motion method is that she's just active in general by doing soul cycle, boxing, running. I mean, pickleball, there's lots of things that Debbie does. So I think that's part of the overall wow story there. But it is that personal backstory that is going to get reporters to say yes, versus, oh, I have a mindset in motion method. That's really powerful, but what puts the extra zing in it is stories like your marathon story.
No, I love it. And I trained, but I trained my mind, not physically. So I trained in a different way. So for people listening today and people who authors and business people, what is the biggest misconception about PR?
Well, the biggest misconception about PR is that it is easy.
Right.
It is not easy. There is a story behind every story. And the other thing that I think people don't understand is that even if you have an interview, sometimes it never gets published. And
Mm.
that just breaks my heart. I say I have a 99% success rate in terms of things getting published. But another thing that people don't understand is to get that 99% being published takes a ton of follow-up. So that's another key to success that many people don't realize, that it takes 2 to 20 times contacting a reporter to get a story
Wow.
published. And for the story that won the Emmy, that was 2 years, 2
Wow.
years of follow-up. And at the awards ceremony, the producer came up and hugged me and said, "I have never met anybody like you who never gave up." So you just have to keep going. And when they tell you, "Well, I don't know when it's gonna get published," then you say, "Okay, I'll check back with you in a week or 2 weeks," depending on what the outlet is. You know, the Today Show took 10 months,
Wow.
and it was scheduled. The flights were booked, the hotels were booked in December, and then it got canceled at the last minute. And the
Oh,
people were crushed. The Green Beret and the therapists who were in that were
right.
crushed. And they asked me, "Did I say something wrong?" I said, "No, you didn't say anything wrong." So I called the producer and I said, "Tell me honestly, do you really want to cover this story?" And she said, "Yes, we really want to cover this story, but not now." So 3 months later in February, I repositioned the story a little bit, and it turned out to be even better. And I write about this story in my new book, Award Winning Publicity. And it's about failing forward, because we essentially failed when they canceled it, but then it ended up being better because they ended up going to the Warriors Heart Ranch, versus the December story was going to be they were going to do Home for the Holidays and they were going to go to their home. But by doing it in February, I got them to go to the ranch. It was a
Nice.
much stronger story. We all got to go to New York, and I literally had tears watching this story happen live in Studio 1A.
I could hear that. I could hear that. Well, that yeah, and you can't do everything, right? We people your clients like myself, we're working on our book, we're working on our job, we have a podcast, whatever we're doing, we have a life and we're busy. And what you do for me is you're another arm, and there's no way I could be that tenacious and have the contacts that you have, plus continually to go after it. It's a full-time job. And that's why I hire Liz, is because I want to get the book out there and I want to help as many people as I can. So I love that. And it's different. I should just ask you, but I do want to get into your book next, your books. But I think some people will need to know, what's the difference between marketing and PR?
Oh, that's a great question. I think marketing is the parent to public relations. So public relations is part of marketing. And when I work with clients, I usually work with the chief marketing officer or the director of marketing. And we brainstorm rather, and strategize, because everything needs to be in alignment with the big picture business goals and the messaging. And so we like to come up with monthly themes and different strategies, but it all needs to be in sync. But the marketing people, a lot of times they may be working on the website, they may be working on events, which is can all be part of a bigger public relations program. And a lot of times I focus on the publicity, but it is a team effort. It is not me sitting here alone trying to figure everything out. I have to be talking to clients and I have to be talking to whoever's in charge of marketing to make sure that we are complementing each other so that we get the publicity wins that are not just fun but impact the bottom line.
Awesome. Love it. Thank you. So, your best selling book, 8 Second PR New Public Relations Crash Course, suggests we only have seconds to capture attention. Why 8 seconds?
Well, the average attention span of an adult is 8 seconds, and I actually think it's less now because that was a Microsoft study in 2001. So I would guess, what do you think? It's like 3 to 5 seconds now.
I think it's 3 to 5. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. But so my point in 8 second PR is you have to be clear, concise, and compelling.
Mm,
And it has 8 points in 8 chapters, and it was actually used by 3 universities as a PR textbook.
I
And
love
and so it's gotten a lot of positive feedback. We're up to 79 reviews on Amazon. That's also very important for authors. So please, if you buy any of my books, write a review. I will love you forever. And then the difference with the new book, Award Winning Publicity, is I'm taking it to a higher level and simplifying it a little bit in that each chapter only has 3 points and
it.
there's 3 parts in the book. And I think that the power of threes is so important, especially when people have a short attention span. And the other thing that's going to be great about award winning publicity, which will be out in a couple weeks, is that I actually, for that book, I interviewed reporters and I asked them about, how do you like to be pitched? Why do you reject something? And ask for their inside secrets, which are not in 8 Second PR. They're both great books, but I'm really excited about the new one.
Oh, me too. So, publicity can elevate a brand overnight. What responsibility do people have once they gain that kind of visibility?
Well, that's another great question. You are a pro at interviewing people, by the way. Uh, so I think I think one of the important things is when you get publicity, it's really important to have a sense of responsibility and integrity. First of all, you want to be honest, and if you don't know something, which you've seen me do in this interview, you just say I don't know. Don't try to make something up because that can backfire. So integrity, a higher purpose, is really important. And going towards a goal and having a higher mission versus just it's about me.
Right.
Because if it's all about you, nobody's going to listen. So you really have to genuinely come across as I want to help people. And if you don't want to help people, then go write maybe a romance book because that's going to entertain them. But as a nonfiction author, you always want to be helping, or a small business, you always want to be helping. I worked with an employment law attorney, and we got a request about there was a new change in overtime pay. And so he got several interviews asking him just to explain what that meant. And it wasn't about him, it was about him educating people on what something meant and how it was going to impact them.
I love it. That's great because when I first started working, when I was trying to figure out what I was going to write, I had all kinds of ideas. And then I met with a book coach. You asked me the same question. But when I first spoke with her a year ago, she said, well, you have 5 books here. And I didn't think I did. I just had a lot of ideas and I had developed one, a couple more deeper. And she said, what really do you feel right now? And I said, I've written about the empty nest. I'm tired of that, 10 years in that. I said, this. I said, but I really want to help people conquer their goals. I know people can if they just follow along. So, and then you asked me the same thing. Why did you do it? I just want to help people. It's always been my thing. I call it a disease. I always want to help people. But enough about me. How do people get a hold of you? How can they hire you? How can they find your book?
Well, thanks for asking. If you want to find out anything about me, the best thing is go to goodypr.com. It's Goody with a Y, and there is a books tab, and the books are there. Or follow me on social media at Liz H. Kelly.
All my guests have their middle name. Yes, Liz H. Kelly. You can call me. I will put you right in touch with Liz. Thank you so much, Liz. This was so fun.
Thank you so much, Debbie. And I'm so excited for your book, Mindset in Motion, because it really describes you and you're such a great connector. And Debbie is like Miss Goal Setter, Miss Action Oriented person. And I just love being your guest today. So thank you.
You are so welcome. It was fun to have you as well. I appreciate it.
Tune in each week for another episode of Mastering the Art of Success with host Debbi DiMaggio. Thursdays, 2 p.m. Eastern. Real stories, real strategies, real success.